so I read the book, and I saw, I mean, I got it via PDF, and I can't wait to see the actual live and in color cover in person. And it's so great, and I felt like every single page I could have riffed off of and gone like on my own story as a conversation about, and I recognize some of the advice that like when you said when you said don't hope for a fast answer, hope for the right answer. I had written you an email years ago. I was trying to sell something. I was pitching something, and I was like, God, and you told me, Bonnie, don't wish for fast, wish for yes. And I'm like, yeah. And I keep that in my head. That lives rent free in my head all the time when I start getting impatient and all of that. So I can only imagine that this is a collection of the words of wisdom that you have been giving as a friend and educator for your entire career, adult life. And so the first thing I want to know, since John, you are a former student, and 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 I love the collection of former students along the way, and I have my own
Mhm.
teacher that I have, who is now one of my very best friends, that I've kept up with all these years. So tell me how, I know how you in the introduction you explained how the book came about, but how did this relationship come about between the two of you, and knowing that John was the right person to illustrate this book? And John, how did you feel going into this project with this collaboration? So whoever wants to go first.
I'm going to let John, I'm going to hand this over to John. I want to hear John's version of it.
Totally, because Gina and I met kind of, I think, over the course of two kind of significant interactions. For me, they felt very significant. After the first one, I don't think there was any way in hell Gina would have asked me to work with anything on her. And the second one was quite redemptive. But I struggled in college big time. The first
Same.
time around.
Yeah.
Second time around was much better, and that is kind of the essence of our meeting. I had written a manuscript on, who knows what, in a very manic phase. I had very oscillating energies for my first round, and I had written something, and I think at the time I was a little more concerned about um, being interesting versus being interested in my writing. I was a little bit I think I was having a tough time socially, and I found art or like maybe expectations of stardom as they manifest in the young artist's mind to be a way to like appeal to a higher social authority. I wouldn't have to be, likable or polite. I can be a raging asshole, but if I was making cool stuff, then I would feel on the in or included in some way. So a lot of torment went into this like, random project, and I pretty boldly knocked on Gina's door during office hours and walked in with, like, where's this? Where can we place this? Uh, and yeah, Gina took me down like 12 pegs in like 5 seconds, and I needed that. I didn't recognize that I needed that at the time, and it actually took me like a while to realize that. But
So how did
What
you
did they
respond in
actually,
the moment?
yeah,
no,
I don't even remember. I remember you coming in, and I remember, again, the impression. I have an impressionistic
yeah,
vision of this. It's like the slightly
yeah,
blurred background and
right.
difference in camera. What did I say?
So you asked a couple of really good questions. One was just loosely, what is it about when I was holding this manuscript, and I was like, happiness, being happy. In reality, it was a extended lamentation on the condition of being unhappy, but and pretty incoherent, to be honest, at the time, just where I was at with my mental health. But you asked me what made me an authority, and what made me think that I should be read. Um, and I remember just like having no response. And I actually do remember what I did say, as I said, I almost died once, twice actually, was my reply. And you said that's not as a unique experience as you think. And it
I
certainly,
remember saying,
yeah, it certainly doesn't qualify you. Then you asked me another brilliant question: is who do you read, and uh, you know, my response at the time, again, given where I was at, I try to give myself a little grace, was I don't read much. I prefer writing, and which is the mark of a novice, I think, a little more preoccupied with the image of wearing the author's hat than the work, writing sentences every day. If you like sentences, and you like reading sentences, then chances are you might like writing them. Um, and then you had this big moment where you step back and you were like, all right, listen, I had said I liked humor writing, and you put a stack of books on your desk from your own collection, like a super generous thing that I'll never forget. And it took me a while to recognize the generosity inherent in this. And you said, well, you need to start reading if you're going to be a writer. You need to move as close to a library as you can, in one if they'll allow it. And and uh, and here, read this stack of books and come back and be prepared to talk about it. Be prepared to have like an educated discourse about what you liked, what you didn't like, where you saw echoes of your own discovering voice, and what made you feel, and yeah. So I took those books and I said, thank you. And then I left the room knowing that I wasn't going to read them. This is the truth.
How did you feel in that moment? I mean, was there that just elevator drop inside you
Oh,
that
yeah.
happens, or like,
Oh, totally embarrassed. I actually remember, I don't know who it was. This was, I'm trying to think, 2019, 2018,
Was?
spring of 2019, actually. So whoever your assistant was, your undergraduate assistant at the time, audibly said, ouch, during our meeting, Uh, and I took those books away, and they were Colin McEnroe's book, and Yes Please by Amy Poehler, The Forest for the Trees by Betsy Lerner. So I took this stack of books away, and it was a map of how to get into my craft for real, and how to be interested versus feeling like I needed to be interesting. It was a roadmap for that. And I honestly, I took it with me as I dropped out of school. I took it with me when I went to Oregon trying to start over again. I was literally really, I tell people I didn't go to Oregon. I just left Connecticut. I was looking for what's the most mileage I can, put between myself and where I'm at. And Portland, Oregon turned into that. And I got there in 2020, and I had intended to make it big on the West Coast, and the pandemic came in, civil unrest hit a peak, fires were very extreme, and I applied to 130 jobs. I got two: Amazon warehouse worker or environmental technician at a hospital. So for the duration of the pandemic, I chose that latter job, and I disinfected COVID-19 positive rooms in the ICU.
wow.
And um, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the exposure to the inland dying, to the kind of decimation of my dream of becoming, whatever on the West Coast. But it also decimated my nightmares of obscurity, and I felt a metamorphosis happening. I read 77 books that year, up from zero the previous year.
Fantastic.
And I switched my craft. I was really mostly drawing and painting at the time, and I switched to writing every day. And my challenge was like, can I write and like just not share? Uh, I think some artists have a fear of sharing their work, and I had a fear of not sharing it. I was the tree in the woods where I was like, if you don't hear me fall, do I make any noise at all? So to make work for myself, and in this bubble of like sanctity that I can allow my artistry to be, was the mission of that year. I ended up re-enrolling in some community colleges, 2 years later coming back to UConn, and then having the audacity to ask Gina for yet another favor, because I re-enrolled in the general studies program. And that's a really wonderful program that UConn offers dropouts to kind of get us back on our feet without having to really have a specialized degree. It's reduced cost. Um, you only have to reach a credit threshold, so it's in some ways less demanding. And it would have saved me from needing to like restart. I had this jumble of loose credits from this confusing era, and if I could just reach 120, then I could have a degree. And let me tell you, cleaning 3,000 toilets in a hospital, you're like, maybe I should get a degree. But the bummer was is I could only take entry level classes when I returned, and I wasn't feeling myself really challenged. So when I asked Gina if I could take her class, I recognized that she would be going out on a limb for me again. I'm not an English student. Um, I should kind of be in as a general studies major in the 1000 level intro classes, and Gina's class, I had heard so much about it. Um, Everybody wanted to be in it. Um, and she gave me a permission number. I told her I tried to explain a little bit of what I had been through. I told her I read all the books. I had them in a neat stack. I returned them. I was ready to talk about them 2 years later, so I must have appeared like quite a slow reader. Um,
I find that impressive, honestly, that you come back.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how long it takes, as long as it's done.
yeah. So, I rounded the corner and a lot of humility entered my creative practice, and it became a very spiritual thing for me. Um, and then, when I felt as it's easy to feel, when you're poor and you're cleaning, you're a janitor and you're kind of really far away from everybody in terms of friends and family and support systems. It's easy to feel like it's a long crawl back or it's like difficult. And when, Gina was like the coach that took me off the bench and gave me a shot, and I really wanted to honor that and do my best. So when I returned, not only through my last bits at UConn, but through my grad degrees, like I was really striving. I got a 4.0 each semester, and I was never late on any assignments. And I think that Gina was able to observe the fruits of that metamorphosis and see like a really dedicated creator in her class, and soon began to see me as a peer and a colleague in time as opposed to a student. So when she offered to collaborate, I was just thrilled that I could remain in this super educational, creatively fruitful relationship for more time. Because being, coming back to school second round, I really felt as though I found my niche in like the writers groups of UConn. I found my niche in the last semester of, the second round of college in my senior year. So the opportunity to recognize how that could just didn't need to end on graduation day, but could just be part of this ongoing community was very exciting to me. I said yes instantly.
That's really cool. So Gina, what did you see in John that like you went from student to I have this book and you're the right person?
That it was again a remarkable sort of understanding, like a the light bulb going on and the recognition. John, when he returned, because I had, I'm enormously fortunate. As you know, Bonnie, I love working with writers at different points of their lives and my life, and watching people find their work. I mean, with you, Bonnie, it was, amazing. And but with other writers, it's like you can tell who can really do it
Yeah.
and who can't. There is something instinctive about it. As not only a reader, but as a writer and as a teacher, there is part of that, or an editor, right? Understand it, that there's part of, like, you see something in somebody that is different. And it's hard to explain because there are, especially with students or in writing groups and writing schools, there are people who try so hard and they will try to beat to death an idea and rework it and come in, or the concept is good but they can't write it. It's sort of like what Stephen King says, or Betsy Lerner talks about, or a lot of people talk about, but that there's there are people who can bring things to the page, and 98% it's hard won and it's earnest and it's whatever, but there are people who can make that other 2% sort of come off the page. It's like, the language, what you're reading becomes like a pop-up book. It takes its own life. It becomes three dimensions. And those are the people who, it's just, it's amazing to be able to work with them. And when I saw that not only John, it was, by far the best and the most mature and the most, really the most generous writer, so that in these advanced writing courses, he, was able to, I could see him helping the other writers and being really careful and thoughtful in his responses and really making them better. So it was like having an apprentice, I would say, in those classes. And I take words like that very seriously. I mean, that's a good thing.
Mhm.
And and then when I saw what he could do with art, which is something to me, that's like,
That's magic. I can't do it.
yeah, I get right, exactly. The things that we can't do are magic. It's like
Yeah.
I could see the writing and say, this guy's really good at this.
Yeah.
But this was like watching somebody do interpretive dance or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, I
Totally.
can't.
It's a completely different skill set. Do you remember when you were first introduced it? I mean, did it accompany an assignment with his writing, or how did you see
That's
like,
an interesting question, John. Do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, I asked if I could
Okay.
submit one of my stories multimodal and have some
Oh,
drawings.
okay.
okay.
So it was actually as a class assignment.
Hmm.
That okay. So that was so it was this recognition that there was this
Yeah.
other room. Like I was looking at this room and thinking, wow, this is an amazing room for
Right.
this young person to create it. And then there was this mansion behind it that I didn't know was there. So um, being a smart person, I said, "Oh, let's let's try to exploit that for my own purposes." You know,
Right.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where. So I think it was just the idea that I knew I co-edited a couple of books. Now, Bonnie, you and I are going to co-edit this one other volume, and then you're
Yep.
going to take over the Fast Women
Yeah.
series. That collaboration is something you have to enter into very carefully, which is the sort of language people use about marriages, right? Like you have to enter into this union
Right.
very carefully, and it's true. Some of the collaborations have been just hilarious and wonderful and terrific. Some of them in the past have been like the one I did with Gene Weingarten, where we came up with, I'm with stupid.
Yeah.
We did those for years in the Washington Post. We did columns in the Washington Post,
Mhm.
and that was great. That was a real collaboration. That was fun. There were other times when I've done work with scholarly books where I think both myself and the other editor felt as if each of us we were the only ones doing all the work and that the other didn't do anything.
Yeah.
So that was
Mhm.
less happy.
Yeah.
So that's what you don't want to repeat.
Right.
But with John, it was asking him. I mean, I think I gave you. I mean, I asked for you to come up with whatever whatever John imagined as ways to put these words into art. And then after, which John did a wonderful reel of, I don't know if you saw it,
Oh yeah.
of
That's why
the
I'm here.
right,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's why I wanted to talk to you guys. 100%. Yeah.
and because I mean, but that's the fun part. It's like, okay, here's free range,
Right.
Mhm.
and then yeah, no, that's the and then to go back and
This is the incredible part to me, and I think that, and this is why, this is the big message, I swear, that I always have for writers, always have, and especially right now in the age of AI, where you can just plunk something in and get an image, plunk something in and get some regurgitated text that's supposed to be coherent, all of these things. But there is this, in this collaborative process, number one, it's brave, and it's vulnerable, because you have to read Gina's work and say, this is what I see and this is what I'm getting from that. And I think as a reader, we always take, everybody brings their own baggage to the page, and we all have our own takeaways to every single thing on the page. And for you to say, I read this that was in your heart, and this is what it pulled out of mine, is extremely vulnerable. And then to have it be a representation of Gina, to then come back and say, well, for me, like the one that you said was phallic, I'm like, oh, it's a tampon. You know what I mean? Like, but but to be able to be trusted in that vulnerability, to know that the honesty in that collaboration is all with the intention of good art, better meaning, and a gift to the reader, not something that is it's not, it's, I mean, to the wrong person, they could have been horribly offended, and that could have been, these are my drawings, and how dare you, and all of that ego gets in the way. And we've all had our moments. John, I have a story very similar of bringing something, and it was learning to be edited is something that I think every creative goes through. And if they don't, then you know what? They're not going to go very far. Um, so to me, that's the huge lesson here. So I want to hear from both of you what, and actually I pulled this from the book because I think it speaks to it beautifully when you say authentic education demands that students learn and not merely that they're taught. It's not about simply offering access to information or data. What happens in the classroom and in life, I'm going to put in my own parenthetical, is not the same as what happens at UPS. It's not like transferring an unexamined parcel of information from one person to another. It must include, as all reputable teachers know, instructing students in academic discipline and personal responsibility. And I think that wraps it up pretty nicely, because man, you're missing out on so much if you never engage with the creative process in a genuine way to explore your own depths and to get better as you go. So that wasn't even a question. That was just me. So,
Right.
but I want to know, like, what do you feel that, what are people missing when they don't engage in this process vulnerably and authentically and with a willingness to grow?
I'll start with that if I can.
Yeah.
I think that what you said about the vulnerability and the idea of vulnerability and courage going together. There's one of the images from the book is about that, and it's one
Mhm.
that we went back and forth on. But one of one of the things that gave me real confidence about working with John, so I mean, who's like 110 years younger than I am, who comes from a very different mindset. John, again, goes outside, he goes outdoors, he deliberately sleeps outdoors, which is something, as you know, like, yeah, I mean, you do, other people do this for fun.
Right.
The idea of sleeping like under a sheet and on a sheet, like under the sky and on the earth is terrifying to me. I think because my relatives did that too recently for that to be fun yet. It just, yeah, we worked really hard to get inside and like on a second floor apartment.
Right.
And, so to sleep, I mean, the closest I ever got to sleeping out was like sleeping on, a fire escape. Like that's okay. I can sleep out on a fire escape on a hot night, but that's about it. That's as far as I go into camping. And but John, his images come from the outdoors, they come from nature. I consider nature a very unnatural. It's not
You're a
why
very
they
indoors person. It's great.
yeah, I'm an indoor cat. I mean, I'm
That's
an
right.
indoor cat. And so, it's different vocabularies, it's different sensibilities, it's different generations, it's different genders, it's different, it's the whole thing. We come out of different worlds.
Yeah.
And yet, that's what makes it fun to collaborate. It really, but I think this wouldn't have worked if, again, we both didn't have um, a sense of confidence, as well as vulnerability, and a sense of, I think, John's word is absolutely right, a sense of humility with this. That you have to have the confidence to say, okay, I'm willing to put myself out there. I'm willing to engage. Okay. And uh, but I'm also willing to negotiate. It is like, okay, this isn't good, but it has to you have to go to it with a sense of humor
Mhm.
because you can't then earnestly, I think, just, not get the funny part. I mean, and that's the creative part, is to be able to see like, okay, I understand what you're doing.
Mhm.
I get it. Theoretically, I get what you're trying to do, but that's not it. So let's go back. Or what do I need to change to clarify
Mhm.
what's really here? And real creativity, Bonnie, as you said, it's not about you know, finding something that is approximate, right?
Mhm.
It's like fighting to get to the actual thing. It's like people who I just gave a talk last night about heart health,
Mhm.
and which again, it's not something I know that much about, but but there were all of these doctors, and then I was there to make people not scared as much. And but I thought, one of the things about eating, about food, is that if you keep eating things you think you're supposed to eat, but they don't satisfy your hunger,
Mhm.
you're miserable,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you really want a piece of chocolate cake
Yeah.
and you keep having like gum,
Mhm.
you're going to eat 100 packs of gum and you're going to hate yourself and hate life. And you should have just had the chocolate cake,
That's right.
right?
Yeah.
And it seems to me that the artificial stuff, like you're attempting, well, I want this. It's not giving yourself what you need. It's the real thing.
Mhm.
Like you need to actually and what to 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 have. I mean, it really, for me, it really is um the eating stuff. It's to ingest something.
Right.
And like with real ingredients and something that's authentically creative, that comes out of hearts and souls and viscera and experience.
Mhm.
It's very different from something that's created. It's like overly processed food. They're telling us to get away from overly processed food. We have
Right.
to get away from overly processed images,
Yeah.
rhetoric, music, from all of the stuff that's falsely created.
That's right.
It's the difference between margarine and butter.
Mm.
I want butter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that make sense? Maybe I'm just
It
hungry.
does. No, I think it does. And I like the comparison to overly processed as AI being another way
Right.
that we overly process real ingredients. And the real ingredients of art is humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that to work with John on this, but then to be able to look, because John, you said it's 103 drawings and there were like
44.
38 or 44.
I
Yeah.
think 44, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so tell Bonnie about that
Yeah.
process for
So
you.
from your angle,
Yeah.
how was it? Were you back in her office on day one, handing her your drawings, and she was like, I
Yeah.
don't know. I have this SNL flashback. Sorry, that's why I said drawings. But sorry, probably before John was born. But Gina, so, but anyway, that, how did you feel going into this project with her and that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think uh one like I want to comment on the gum analogy real
Yes.
quick. Is like I learned this recently that gum makes people hungrier
Mhm. It does.
Oh,
because like, as it
Really
stimulates your digestive system and your stomach's like, oh, there's chewing going on upstairs. That means we can expect a swallow soon and we'll have food. And
right.
it stimulates your stomach acid anyway, and then nothing shows up, you
That's
know?
right.
And that's, I think, really completes the AI metaphor.
yeah. Oh, that's
It's,
really, no, that's great. I didn't even
Yeah.
know that. That's
Yeah.
perfect.
That
in
is.
some ways, this AI slop, which is what some people
Yeah.
call AI slop, the vast quantities of AI generated content being uploaded to previously artistically dominated digital spaces, it's creating a hunger for the real thing again.
Yeah.
Um,
Beautifully said,
yeah,
John. Really nice.
Yeah.
yeah. But for me, another huge part of it is, well, two things. One is like mutual respect. Like I was thrilled because there's definitely been times where I've been working with somebody and they'll turn back an illustration or something, and I won't necessarily be confident that we're moving towards something stronger, you know? But when we were revising, I was eager for any and all comments from Gina. I really like worked with her, read her work, and felt as though when we were going back to the drawing board, we were going to emerge with something that had improved and had matured. So there was that element of excitement for me, and with my process too, it's like it's probably not recommended. I would call it deeply inconvenient the way I do my work. I execute everything fully in pen and then send it out. I think a commercial illustrator would suggest doing it in pencil and getting it approved in pencil before doing it in pen. But to me, there's you don't get the full impact unless the texture is there, and so much of the emotion comes out in the pen work, like so much. If you make something like if you're striving for darker tones, there's more cross hatching, it'll be more moody. If you do it pretty light and with really light line weight, the amount that the illustration can change between pencil and pen is so much that I wanted to flesh out the idea fully before sending it along. So having 44, not 44 sketches that were rejected, but 44 complete illustrations that were sent back, to some would be considered inconvenient or inefficient or something like that. But to me, the best ideas come from that long meditation on what you're up to. I think it's important for us to be bored, to be in a period of frustration, to be staring at something and wishing it was recognizing that it is an approximation, you know, and knowing it's not right, but then knowing that you can send that off to your collaborator and get some insight as to why it's an approximation and not the real thing. That to me, going that extra mile infuses every step of the process with a sense of excitement and then yields rewards in terms of direction, in terms of where you're going in direction. I feel that way with everything because I'm also a comic artist, and so often I'm told to switch to a digital medium. I do a lot of comics in watercolor. It's a terrible idea, but
Mm,
that's what I do, and I love it, and it looks good, and it also gives me a lot of time to commune with the spirit of the work. And I'm told that if I go digital, I can do frames really quickly. I can copy and paste backgrounds to frames and only have to redraw the foreground. But when you finish something, having put the time in, you realize every square inch is entirely unique. You're looking at a living and breathing representation the human soul in a way um, that not only AI can never replicate, but that certain digital or kind of corporate efficiency mindsets take away from in time. And I do think that the suggestion, with where our technological world's headed, I do think the suggestion is going to morph from, oh, you should do it digitally to have you considered generating it on AI. It'll be so much faster. Um, but you lose connection to the work. You significantly lose control over the vision. You're honing something, It's like you're sharpening a blade, and then to to kind of cave to something to a process that takes less time is to smash that blade against a rock and start doling it again. It was super important to me throughout this process that every step of the way was given like its full attention. And when something was sent back to be reworked on, the predominant attitude was excitement, for both of us, and it tied in with the work and balancing life and what that might do to our schedules and all these regular worries and anxieties about being an artist, in the world. But we led with curiosity,
mm.
and that's something you can only really do if you have a strong sense of mutual respect and admiration for your co-creator. So I think that was essential.
Yeah,
Oh, so nice.
that is.
That's
That's awesome.
great. And Bonnie, you're the first one we're having a conversation with about this.
This is fantastic. I wrote down so many things that I want to go back to just because you mentioned frustration is part of the process. And my son's almost 10 years old, and we have a lot of conversations around how if you're feeling frustrated, that means you're in the learning space, and that's something that's good. And that's part of learning is frustration, because I think that instant gratification world that we're in, if it doesn't come easy, then we walk away from it very quickly. And so I think we need to continue to have those conversations about, how frustration is a good thing, because that means you're on the cusp of learning, and that's really, really important. And as a writer, I don't like writing. I like having written. It's
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's like that whole thing of like it's an extremely my shitty first draft day is on Monday every week, and it is my hardest day to get through. But then the rest of the week is fun because I'm editing and tweaking and turning over phrases and shuffling paragraphs, and that's just the sandbox.
Yeah.
It's a good
Mhm.
time. So I think that's something that a lot of people aren't willing to subject themselves
Right.
to. And it takes me back to the cliche of the journey is the destination kind of thing. And I think when we hear that cliche, that people don't understand what that means, because if you are a person that leans into AI, whether that's for your content, your visual content, or your word content, you don't even know what's not good. Like you
Yeah.
you you look at this and like, this is fucking fantastic. No, no, it's not.
Mhm.
Because you don't
So
even have
true.
an understanding of what's not good,
Mhm.
because you've never gone through the process, and you've never been part of actually putting something together. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's good enough. I mean, the good enough. And I am not,
Yeah.
and I don't think that John, I don't know if you would say this about yourself. I mean, I am certainly not a perfectionist. That is, I have many, many demons, but that's not one of mine. It's like, again, I feel like, with Bonnie, when you're a columnist, when you've got these deadlines and they're constant, it's like you can't afford to be. It's like, no,
Yeah.
there's a deadline. It's like, what's your end? Like people will, the sweet, with the Irma attendees, it's like, what's your inspiration? It's like a deadline and a paycheck. That's it. It's so interesting. It's
Right.
not like I wait for the muse. I wait for somebody to go, if you don't get this in,
Right.
we're sunsetting you
Yep.
and there's $50 in the mail. I mean, this is like it's not an amorphous
Yep.
kind of thing. But it is the idea that that what that the idea with this book in an interesting way, I hope, is not about the abstract.
Mm.
It's very much just what John was saying. It's about the detail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's there the comments are sort of, I hope, general, and people can understand them. I can't use the word relatable. I don't think it's a real word, but that people will find them sympathetic. People will find them recognizable. People will go, oh, I'm not nuts and I'm not alone. I feel this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they are very specific, and that's why the artwork is so wonderfully specific, and that it's like it was so much fun to see John translate the
Mm-hmm.
words into image. I mean, it was translating them into a different language. I've had several books translated into other languages. I have no idea what they say.
Mm-hmm.
I have all of these, but they could be. I have Perfect Husbands and Other Fairy Tales. I have Chinese editions and Japanese editions, and they
Could
could
be
be
one of
saying,
those Japanese tattoos and you don't even know it.
exactly. No, exactly. It's like, stay away from this crazy lady. It could be submit to your husband, listen to everything that I don't know
Right.
because I'm an
Right.
ignorant American. I have no idea what any of the stuff says. But when John translated it into ink, um, it made so much sense and it gave it so much more depth because I could see how he again interpreted it. It was like having an interpreter. It was like having somebody for some talks that I've given. There have been signers for the deaf,
Sure.
and to see them again turn in a way into interpretive dance what I'm saying, and to see the gestures, it's like opening a fan. It's like, here's this thing, you think it's just these two things together, and then you open it and there's this whole other world, or it just all of these other dimensions. And to have two imaginations that can, it's not a mirroring. um so what's the word? If it's not a mirroring, it's a completion or something. It's some of the missing parts, but then again, the reader is the third collaborator,
Hmm.
right? Because the
Right.
reader will bring his or her or their own meaning to it and their own story. And I mean, most of these are, they're ways to start conversations, or they're ways to, I hope that's the idea. It's like, they're not that it's my school, but you can yell at the teacher,
Mhm.
and there are no grades. I
Right.
mean, this is not, you can, it's a prompt.
Yeah.
And it's a coloring book.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
would love to think that people could get out, their own
Their little gel pens.
pencils, right? Their
Yeah.
own washes, and
Yeah.
make their own images with it. But it it is it's a rare thing,
Mhm.
I believe, to come up with this kind of bringing together of these sensibilities.
Yeah.
And I think is in danger of becoming rarer
Yeah.
than it already is.
Yeah. It's funny.
Hmm.
I wrote down before you even said it, I put starts the conversation because I interviewed you when I was with the NSNC. Oh my gosh, it had to be 12 years ago now. And talk about like what it meant to be a columnist, and one of the things you said is that it starts the conversation. That is the point. And I think this book absolutely does that. Like I said, when I read it, every little thing, I have my own story that it resonated with me. I won't say I was relatable, it resonated with me totally, with very different things. And as far as this process goes, I think and I've heard a couple of people say this, and I'm about to jump on that bandwagon. It's going to be the next homemade. Like when you make soup, when it's lumpy, that's how you know it's homemade. So
Hmm.
it and is this going to be the next novelty? This is instead of your your pot holder or your hat or whatever it is, you've got this handmade
Right.
manuscript and artwork, and it's going to add value to that human touch. So,
I hope so. I like that idea. I mean, it's like it's something that we hand knit.
mhm,
This was
Hmm.
like, each of us had, one piece, uh, needle. Each of us had one needle.
yeah,
Hmm.
And that together we created this
yeah,
garment, you
yeah,
know. I mean, it's not too many cooks spoil the pot.
mhm,
But this was, and of course we did this. Some of it we met at coffee shops, at Chinese restaurants, but we live a couple of hours apart.
mhm,
And so a lot of this was seeing things for the first time on a screen,
mhm,
and then printing it out, and then and but it were, so that's what some of these comments. And I do forget, having been a teacher for 38 years,
mhm.
I do forget sometimes how um, quick my comments are. It's people, so that they, they might they might not. Amy Sherman, I put the reel that John made of the
Mhm,
comments, which was his idea, to
mhm.
have me write them out in red ink, because
Yeah.
what I said
Mhm.
um, was, Amy said, please. She put on Facebook, please tell me these are the remarks that you make to your students, and they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Is that
really
where that comes from, Gina? Is having a career in education? Because as a person who I don't edit face to face, it's, track changes or what have you. Um, it took me a long time, and and depending on the person, I'm still not all the way there to be that frank with someone about their writing, because I have been, there are certain people that just spirals, especially when it's an editorial or like when I was at the newspaper and it was typically a middle-aged white man. Let's just call a duck a duck. And then it and could not handle that the either the fact checking or the turn of phrase editing or style editing even that was just AP required. Um, and you have to get to the point where, it's not about you, it's about the reader you have in mind. You know who your reader is, and it's about what's the point you're trying, like where she said, like, what's this about? And that whole thing. What is your point? What's the point you're trying to make? If you wait till paragraph 4 to get to it, we're done. You've missed
Right.
everybody. So like, was that an evolution in you? Did you have a hard time getting there, or have you always been a very frank person, and regardless of your own insecurities, you would be like, no, this is what I see?
I mean, as you're asking me that question, I'm going back and thinking, I think frank is a very kind word for what people have said. I have been. Again, I came from a family, as some of the parts of the book, so that after watching a movie when I was a kid, 5 years old or something, I said, I wanted to see my name up in lights, and my Uncle Bill said, change your name to vacancy. It was
Oh,
always a tough
that's
crowd. I mean, it
yeah,
was always in my family, you didn't get away. When they used to call me Snow White, but I Drifted
yeah.
became a bestseller. Um, in Canada, it was on the bestseller list for 28 weeks. And in
Wow.
those days, you didn't get that information quickly. And Globe and Mail was a national bestseller in Canada for 28 weeks. And in the top 10. And I called my father and I said, Dad, it's been on the bestseller week for a list for weeks. And he said, well, honey, it's got snow in the title.
Ha ha. Yeah.
Canadians are
Right.
very literal people. And I mean, other people's parents would send them balloons or
Right.
what, so, but my old man, it was like he'd waited his whole life to hear
Use
that.
that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was very proud of me, but it's just
Sure.
so I mean, one young man who graduated just a couple of years ago after John, but who is now is a teacher and has survived being in my classes. But at one point, I pass out because it's 2.5 hour classes. So about after 90 minutes, I pass out candy before the break because I only get one break and pass out candy. And but before I did on the first day, I said, okay, anybody have any peanut allergies, anything? And this fairly shy, he ended up taking a bunch of classes with me, but it was his first class. And he said, oh, I'm only like allergic so that if somebody had a Snickers and then kissed me on the mouth, I might have a reaction. I said, that's not going to happen. And he came up after class and said, do you remember what you said to me when you asked if I had allergies? And I was like, no, I have no idea. What did I say? And he said, you said, like, that's not going to happen. He didn't, I didn't remember that. Just,
Right. Just
yeah, don't worry about it, kid.
right.
So that,
Yeah.
he was wearing like a little hat.
Oh,
Oh, but so yeah, I think I sometimes say things glibly that come out. But life is short. You have to tell people this doesn't work. I have no idea what you're talking about.
right.
Help me understand what this is. This is a cliche. This is a so. But John, what's your
I
reaction?
want to, and I before you interject your reaction, I want to add to it. I think so many people consider that a generational thing that we have coddled your era. Like me, a Gen X, I survived with a bike and a best friend, and that was it. So like, and they say that we've coddled. Like, is there? How did how do you perceive those kinds of frank interactions or from in the evolution of it? Was that strange, or did you grow up in a family too that was just as honest, we'll say?
Yeah, I definitely grew up in a family where like jokes were king, and to uh sustain especially my dad's attention, you had to be kind of quick and on your feet and make jokes, and they were often at each other's expense. So I would say, yeah, I was some similarities there. Also, to quote Gina School, don't ask questions that if you're unwilling to deal with the answers.
That's
Truth
right.
takes courage to hear as well as to speak.
Right.
Like, I think, having done a lot of workshops where I'm, commenting on my peers' work, and then also having been a GA and for 6 semesters, working with students and grading and commenting on their reflections. Uh, I, I do. I'm not sure if you feel this way, Gina, but like you can be more frank with a student who can handle it, a little more. And you want to be true to yourself, which is honest. So you're never gonna, just lie and say it's great, it's hot, perfect, you did great. No notes, you're not
Hey,
gonna say
it's
that.
too easy. It's too easy
Yeah,
to give everybody
yeah.
an yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna engage with it seriously, but some students I think you can tell when they're really there for the work and not maybe for themselves or on too focused on their own image and can really let the a frank comment push their work in a stronger direction. So I think that's an aspect to it. In terms of like speaking on behalf of my generation. I don't feel qualified. I don't know these people. You know,
Right. I think
um,
it's too easy to just lump everybody together,
it
but I
is.
think, I think I need to go I think I need to be a little harder on my son now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
But
that's the
John, I'm
takeaway.
going to ask you to tell Bonnie one of my favorite stories, which I tell about you, but you're here, so you can tell it. Where it was from, John told it in the class, you wrote about it, but it was where your father told you to land the plane.
Yeah, I have a whole story about that, but it's like a written kind of reflection on the dynamics of my family. But it was one of his catchphrases. He had all these catchphrases. No hospital, no cops was his catchphrase.
Mhm.
Safety second was a catchphrase,
Oh,
and land the plane was a catchphrase.
yeah.
And the effort of land the plane was basically if we were telling a story and it wasn't reaching a satisfying conclusion quick enough, he
Yeah.
would start saying, land the plane, an indicator that, our time was up and
Yep.
we would soon have to yield the floor to another
Right.
sibling that had a zinger lined up and knew how to deliver.
That's
Um,
great.
so in some ways that was not the easiest emotional environment to grow up in,
No,
but it was
right.
also very much, I always felt as though it was like storytelling boot camp, and that we were always on the nose with that, is that we were training, we didn't realize it. And then I think when we all three of us kids, when we were in high school or more social spaces, all three of us can deliver a story very well. And there's no doubt to me that that is directly traceable to Land the Plane. We hear it. It's a phantom voice in
Here in the background, yeah.
around our skulls, even when no one's saying it.
Yep. It's
And
always
I have used it since John told that
Yeah.
story.
it's
I have
great.
used it. I use
Yeah.
it in the classes, and I explain them to John, and I said,
Circling.
this,
Starting
this
to circle.
it's like I said, this is like you are over O'Hare for 45 minutes.
Right.
Just land the plane,
The plane.
choose another airport, or
That's
Yeah.
give us the safety devices. I need
something.
oxygen. I
Right.
need something. Land the plane.
That's
But
right.
it's really perfect.
It is.
It's absolutely perfect. And
It is.
so I like to think that on every page we figured out how to land the plane
Yeah.
Good.
or the other
Yeah.
on every page of the book. But
Hmm.
I think it's going to be a wonderful gift book that people will absolutely share with many. Um, yeah, it's wonderful. And I think, look at that, it's 10:01. I think it's time for us
oh,
to land this plane. So it's like you planned it that way, you know? So it's perfect.